So good morning, everyone. I'm Darla Wilkerson. I'm the Executive Director for Disability Inclusion of Greater Kansas City. And I want to thank you all for being in attendance today at this webinar on intersectionality of employee resource groups / business resource groups. So we'll refer to those as ERGs or BRGs throughout the presentation. We're excited to have with us today a panel of amazing people. Jennifer Hirth is from UMB Financial here in Kansas City. And Jennifer spent years helping create and develop UMB's Abilities Business Resource Group, where she now serves as the chair for the BRG. She's also serves on our board as one of our board of directors and is the secretary of our board of directors. We also have Ari Copeland, and Ari is the operations specialist at Black & Veatch Corporation. Ari is a co-chair of Black & Veatch's Diversity and Inclusion Council and former chair of Black & Veatch's Pride ERG. And then Ari is here in Kansas City as well. And Laura Isaacs is an executive assistant in Chicago headquarters at Grant Thornton, and she's executive committee lead for Diverse Abilities and Allies BRG. And then we also have Karina Sanchez, and Karina is the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Associate at Grant Thornton also, where she manages the BRG program and drives DE&I strategies across the firm. So we have an amazing panel with us today, and we're so excited to have a good variety of folks to talk about how they've experienced intersectionality in their roles and in their company. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves here in a little bit, kind of in a little bit more detail. Those of you that are from Chicago or Wisconsin, we welcome you as well. We decided this year in talking with our sister affiliates with Chicago and Wisconsin that we wanted to do some joint kind of collaborative efforts. And so this is the first of first of three. And I want Laura and Judy to say a few words from their particular affiliate and just welcome folks. So Laura, would you like to go first?
Sure. First of all, Darla, thank you so much for having us. So I'm Laura Wilhelm. I'm the Executive Director of Disability in Chicagoland. I'm thrilled to see so many of our partners here this morning. And as Darla said, we're really excited about the new partnership that we have this year in working with Disability in Greater Kansas City and Disability in Wisconsin. We're excited to get to work together to kind of share information and resources. And I think it's also a really good opportunity for us to connect some of our local business partners with some of the business partners in Chicago, in Kansas City and Wisconsin. So Darla, thanks again for leading the session this morning, and we look forward to doing this a couple more times this year.
Great, thanks Laura. Hey Judy.
Hey, good morning everybody. I'm Judy Quigley. I'm the Executive Director of Disability in Wisconsin. And I really pretty much echo everything that Laura said. We are really delighted to be able to have this opportunity to partner both with Kansas City and with Chicago. Our hope is that it is just broadening our audience, broadening the wealth of information that we can bring all of the member and partner organizations. So be interested to hear everybody's feedback on it, and it's just a pleasure to participate. And we look forward to continued collaboration down the road. So thank you.
Great, thanks Judy. And I just love this whole collaborative effort. It's been fun working with both of you, and looking forward to the rest of the year too. So just a little bit for those of you that don't know about us. So this is our team here in Kansas City. Again, I'm the executive director, and then Jill Webb is on as well. She's our assistant director, and Brenda Perkins is on as well, and she's our business relations consultant. Without this team, it would be very difficult for us to be doing any of the types of programming and events that we have in place. So I thank both of them as well. We also have a 14-member board of directors, and Jennifer Hirth is one of our board of directors. You heard me mention that. There's several others that are on the webinar today. If you as a board member want to give a shout out to folks in the chat and let them know that you're one of the board members, that's great. These folks are amazing individuals, but also the corporations, the companies that they work for are doing some amazing work around disability inclusion as well. And so they help lead and provide governance for this organization, and just know that their efforts are what helps make us grow and what helps make us sustainable, and we're very appreciative of that. Also, the corporations that we have, the brands, we have over 45 brands here in Kansas City that are in partnership with us. We also are expanding to Omaha, Nebraska area, that you see a few folks from there. Any of these organizations too aren't just located here in Kansas City, right? We're across the nation, we're across the globe. But we're just thrilled to have folks that are supporting this organization, but also more importantly, supporting their efforts in their particular companies when it comes to disability inclusion. So thank you all for your partnership. So as many of you know, Disability In's mission, and then the affiliates' missions, we all have kind of the same mission, and that's to work with companies to help promote their disability inclusion efforts in the workplace and marketplace. And one of the focuses of these efforts is assisting in the development of disability-focused ERGs or BRGs, which can often be a struggle for many companies when it comes to people feeling comfortable to self-identify. We wanted to offer a panel presentation because it gives you an insight of particular personal efforts. And the intersectionality topic today is exactly what we're wanting to focus on. Every organization and group includes people with disabilities. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined this term intersectionality to describe the experience of living with multiple identities. For example, I'm a white, gay woman with a disability. This is an example of race, gender, sexual orientation, and disability all intersecting. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We want to talk about intersectionality in terms of how disability can interconnect, or what we say intersect, with other ERG and BRG groups. People with disabilities are already a part of your women's group, they're a part of your LGBTQ plus group, and so on. And our panelists are here today to talk to you about how you know, their experiences are with the intersecting of the various groups that they belong to or have been a part of, and lead. So intersectionality, when recognized and embraced, really strengthens our work cultures. So let's get started, and let's have each of our panelists share a little bit more about their personal positions and what they are in charge of at their particular company. Karina, would you like to just share quickly a little bit about yourself, and then I'll have the others as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Karina Sanchez. I use she, her pronouns. As Darla mentioned, I work at Grant Thornton as a senior diversity, equity, inclusion associate. I focus in leading our BRGs along with my teammates. We have 9 BRGs. And then I also help lead other DEI initiatives. So one of the big things I'm working on is our DEI communication. So we started a monthly internal DEI podcast where we just like unpack a bunch of different DEI topics, as well as leading our internal inclusion conference in the fall. And really excited to be here.
Excellent, thank you. How about Jennifer? Would you like to share next?
Good morning. Excuse me. I am from UMB Financial here in Kansas City. I have been with the company for just a little over 14 years, and I serve in our talent acquisition space. I've recruited for a variety of our lines of businesses, but specifically now focused on our consumer based lines of businesses. And I joined our BRG, the Disability BRG, back when it really BRG started to be formed here at UNB, and then decided, through working through it all, I have a passion because I have a physical disability myself, and so I have a passion around disability awareness and inclusion, and felt that leading the BRG for a few years would be a great opportunity to really make an impact in our company and our community.
Excellent. Thank you. Ari.
Yeah, hi, my name's Ari Copeland. I go by he, him, his, and I work for Black & Veatch Corporation. And if you're not familiar with what we do, we're an engineering, design, and construction firm that designs water and wastewater facilities, power facilities, and things that make First Life possible. So I work in Black & Veatch's water business unit. So I do water and wastewater treatment for a living. I've done that for almost 16 years. I love it. I'm passionate about it. But I'm very passionate about this topic because I am a trans man, I am queer, and I do have a disability people can't see. So I was diagnosed as dysgraphic and dyslexic in 11th grade. So I didn't really receive accommodations much later in my life, but it did impact my ability to learn and read and understand language through that lens. So I'm very passionate about this topic. Just, when people think about disabilities, they only usually think about things they can see. So I really just show up to just give people another perspective that, yeah, you can have a disability and still be successful, and it's something to be celebrated. It's not something to be ashamed of. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. Laura?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Isaacs. I use she, her, and hers pronouns, and I identify as a person with multiple invisible disabilities. For anyone on the call who requires a visual description, I am a Black woman with long black and like dark red braids with beads and jewelry in it, and I'm wearing an orange shirt and glasses with a kind of mod black and white stripes. My job at Grant Thornton is as an executive assistant, and I have made my career as an executive assistant. I've been doing it now for about 30 years. And my disabilities are acquired. And once I started to live in that identity as being a disabled person and realized how difficult it was for me to be accommodated while still having mobility and, all of the things that we kind of take for granted. And kind of realizing how much more difficult it must be for people who have physical disabilities or who don't have the privileges that I've had to be able to navigate corporate America or just to get a job at all. And so that's where my passion for disability inclusion and accessibility, as well as mental health at work comes in, because we need to make sure that we're creating spaces that are accessible for everyone, and that people are able to get the accommodations that they need in order to be their best selves at work.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Before we start with the questions, I just wanted to mention, if any of you have a question as we go through each of our questions to the panelists, please put that in the chat. And then at the end, we'll have an opportunity for those questions to be addressed. So feel free to do that. So with our, oops, wrong way, hold on. With our panelists, we're going to start with Karina, and Karina's going to take the lead on this first question as to why do you think ERG BRGs are important? And if you'd like to give a specific reason for your company, that's great as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I just love everyone who is sharing, like, all of their panelists are part of their identities, because you're able to see like how even all of us like have a bunch of intersecting identities, and how that really impacts like our passions and how we show up at work, and even just potentially addressing blind spots that others might have. So I just love that that was part of the conversation. And I realized I didn't share some of mine, so I'll do that now quickly. But for myself, I'm part of the Latinx community. I'm a woman, first generation graduate, and also a person with invisible disability. And so for me, obviously, having all those intersections as well really drives my passion for diversity, equity, inclusion work. But getting back to the question, I think it's, a really great question. Happy to share my thoughts. And I know you mentioned a little bit about what ERGs and BRGs stands for, but briefly just kind of sharing formal definition for folks that BRGs might be new for them. And so these groups are really, internal networks that are voluntarily led by employees that bring employees together that might have shared identities, experiences, or interests. And oftentimes they're supporting organizations' DEI and business strategy. And usually the big focus is around retention, development, and recruitment of specific members. And so that's a lot of the areas where they add value. And so, for example, at Grant Thornton, we have 9. And so some of these center around race, which are the more common ones. So we have an African-American BRG, Pan-Asian, and Latinx. And then we also have groups that center around gender, the LGBTQ plus community, as well as veterans and folks who have a disability. And so like many companies, BRGs hold a lot of importance to, employees for a specific reason, but then also the employers as well, so the organizations in itself. And so I'd like to just share maybe 2-3 areas where I've seen BRGs play an important role at Grant Thornton, and also just my previous firm as well, to see, if that's something that resonates with folks, to see if you're not doing this or are trying to make the business case for BRGs, you can leverage some of these points. And so the first one that I've noticed is community and psychological safety. And so for our BRGs at Grant Thornton, they've been really critical in creating a community for employees where they feel like they belong, and it's helped with overall employee satisfaction, because I think oftentimes BRGs are creating that kind of safe space, psychological safety that sometimes they don't feel in the broader organization. And so, that's really kind of helped create that sense of community and inclusion. And I think too, in creating that, the organization too is then also realizing what is needed to ensure that that inclusion is felt beyond the BRG. And I think that's so important, especially right now with virtual and working from home. I think most of us are still doing that. And so having this strong sense of community and still creating virtual spaces has allowed folks to feel more connected. I know for myself, that was the case. I started Grant Thornton a little bit over a year ago. And so I was only in the office for about a month. And so I didn't really make those connections. And so actually in leading BRGs and actually being participant as a member, I was able to build that connection with folks. And so an example of what we've done at Grant Thornton is a lot of our BRGs have created almost like informal spaces, whether it's just a space to have, for example, our Latinx BRG has a cafecito where it's just a safe space for folks to and members to talk about current events or even challenges that their community is facing in the organization. And so they kicked that off early when we shifted to working from home, and they did that on a monthly occurrence. And we were surprised to see such large engagement, even more so than in person, because I think people were craving that interactive connection with employees. And we started seeing other BRGs adopt similar kind of informal lunch chats or their own version of that. So I think that's really important as we're thinking about just the value BRGs provide to underrepresented employees at the firm, especially depending where you are in your DEI journey. It can really create that culture of inclusion and safety for folks. And just trying to be mindful of time, I'll just share one more thing. The other area where BRGs at Grant Thornton have added a lot of value is business impact. So, and I think in an ideal state, BRGs also go on their own journey, depending where the organization are in their overall DI journey. And so for us, we've got into a place where we've been able to set up our BRGs in a way where they're able to, impact the business and be part of, changing structures and policies that will result in that true equity for specific BRGs. But I would say, in order to achieve that, like, you do have to create avenues where BRGs can have a voice and be part of that decision making and share those recommendations to see that change. And so at Grant Thornton last year, we created a DEI task force that is made up of several, I think half of our executive leadership committee or team, who are actually folks that champion the BRGs that we have. And so about each month for the past year, we've had our BRGs come up with focused list of asks that they present to the DEI task force. And these asks can include policy changes. So we've had things like extended parental leave from our working parents, or financially investing in partner organizations that are going to help diversify our pipeline, or even nonprofits that are committed to like social and racial justice in our communities. And one of the other things that has resulted as a result of that is we created a public DEI report that like showed our demographic data and even just goals around our diversity numbers. In the past, like that was something that, we've been advocating for a while, but I think it coming from our BRGs really encouraged our leadership to release that report. And I'm helping our diverse abilities present in the next 2 months, so really excited for that opportunity. I think we have a lot of progress to make in disability inclusion at Grant Thornton, so I'm really excited to work with that BRG and make some impactful changes for folks who might have disabilities. And so I just want to be mindful of time. So I'll just, if anyone else has anything to add, I'll turn it over to the other panelists. I know there's so many different areas of the roles BRGs play and why they're important. So I'll just give other folks an opportunity to add there. Thank you.
So alongside of a lot of the internal impacts that the ERGs can make, UMB, we have products that are to customers as well. So there's a lot of external engagement and involvement, particularly, making sure that products are inclusive and material that we give to our customers and clients are in the right language and make sense, that they're accessible, different things like that. I've participated in several opportunities where I've given insight on accessibility of buildings or our School of Economics that school children come to ensure that we're inclusive of all those abilities that come through our doors, whether it's internal or external. So I think that's really a great opportunity for any of our ERGs, BRGs to also make that impact, is that business purpose, as well as, we partner a lot with, focusing in on marketing, recruiting, product development. So those are some other things, as well as, the community outreach and getting involved with different organizations within our community and giving back to those that kind of coincide with our ERGs.
Excellent. Let's move to the second question. And Ari, I think this one was yours in terms of taking lead. So explain how the different BRGs intersect and how intersectionality plays a part in the success of the ERG BRGs that your company has.
Sure. We have several ERGs, as similar to what the previous person mentioned, most of them revolving around race and gender and things of that nature. But I can speak for what the Pride ERG has done within Black and Beach, and basically what we do is we've really tried to develop a team approach with all of the ERGs and saying, hey, we recognize that there are queer people, trans people within all of these areas. It's not a box. It's really not a silo. We're everywhere, and so are you. You're a part of us. So it's not really that we're separate entities. We're really all just working together around the same cause. And really we've had a lot of success hosting events together. And we actually do an event on intersectionality. We did it with our Ebony ERG, which is a ERG for our Black professionals and allies. And that whole event revolved around explaining what intersectionality actually is. And I'm glad that you mentioned, Kimberly Crenshaw coining that phrase, and really that she was a lawyer, and that she was just actually what she was trying to do was describe intersecting identities and their impact in terms of privilege and power. That's really what she was trying to understand, understanding the different experience that Black women experiences versus Black men and white men and white women, etc. So we really try to put a lot of focus on that. We try to bring in, we've done lots of events with our women's network to try to, share experiences around, queer women or trans women, or that really we're celebrating all women. And it's okay to celebrate differences, and it's not actually separate from what Black and Veatch does as a company. We're not doing this side activity. It's really part of what we do. And, I feel personally that by reaching out to the other ERGs, we demonstrate to people that really when we're helping ourselves, we're really helping the collective whole. And I'm wearing this shirt because this shirt to me is a symbol of intersectionality. I love it. And for anyone who needs a description, I really love that Laura did that. So thank you, Laura. You've made me more aware. My shirt, I have a red sleeve shirt on that says #BU, and it's in rainbow colors. And we actually sold them through a fundraising site called Bonfire. And we actually gave the money to 3 organizations. We gave it to Trevor Project, we gave it to the NAACP, and we gave some money actually to Disability in Greater Kansas City to show our allyship and to actually recognize that we're helping people in our community, but we're also helping other people that are outside of it too, and that's okay. So I don't know if that's a great answer, but I'll open it up. I think Laura actually wanted to say something more, so go for it, Laura.
Yeah, I absolutely do want to talk about intersectionality. As a Black woman with multiple disabilities, intersectionality is basically my life, right? And I think it's important for BRGs to work together because disability is so much more prevalent than I think a lot of people realize. And I also, one of the first things that we did when I was the national coordinator for the BRG was to partner with our Equality GT Business Resource Group, which is our group for LGBTQ+ individuals. And we did a World AIDS Day conversation. And it was, at that time, was one of the most attended culture conversations that we had in the Chicago office. And a lot of people didn't know that AIDS was considered a disability. And so just doing that education around what disabilities even are, because a lot of people don't realize that things that they consider normal, like diabetes or high blood pressure, are actually considered disabilities, and that, that it does affect every part of your life. So it's really important to me to make sure that I'm working with all of our BRGs. Hopefully we're going to be working with our working parents in a couple of weeks or couple of months to talk about being a parent of a child with autism or being on the autism spectrum. We just recently partnered with our African American BRG, of which I'm also a part of the leadership, but we did a Black mental health event to talk about how Black people's mental health is so much more affected by everything that's been happening in the past year. I also think, given the recent surge in Asian American hate crimes and things like that, it would be important for our African American BRG and our Pan Asian BRG to maybe have a conversation about, some of that manufactured kind of friction between the Black community and the Asian community. So I think if you really take the time to sit and think about the things that we encounter every day and the experiences that we have every day, and think about how those experiences will be different for people who maybe didn't go to college or who don't have mobility or who is from a different racial background. All of those things are important to creating that psychological safety at work that Karina talked about earlier. And so it's really important that BRGs, I believe it's important for BRGs to work together as much as possible.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in on this question? Okay, I'm going to go to the third. Jennifer, I think you have the lead on this one. How did you get started with your disability-focused ERG BRG?
So UNB, our BRGs really started to kick off in 2014. It was part of our inclusion and diversity strategies. We have 8 different BRGs. We have our abilities, our Asian American, the EPIC, which is our African American, our Pride, which is our LGBTQIA, Somos, which is our Latin American, and our Generations, which is now young professionals, as well as women, and our vet BRG. One of the things that obviously is really important is that these memberships are all voluntary, and we constantly are emphasizing that any associate can belong to any BRG, and they don't have to self-identify as any of those categories or however you want to call them, because we really want to ensure that we have that inclusive approach. There are many individuals that have involvement in a variety of different of our BRGs. So that's really kind of where our BRG started. As I had mentioned, for myself specifically, I got started when everything was really starting from the ground up. And really kind of have seen it grow and evolve. And I will add that for our disability space, I think it's the way I put it when I have people, new members wanting to join our BRG, is that we're kind of a small but mightier group than some of the other BRGs, and that's okay. We don't have to always have a happy hour or a social event or different things like that, because much like, each one of us is unique, so we're the BRGs. And I think that's one thing that I really appreciate, is there's not an expectation that each BRG has to do this, this, and this. We have, the same goals and objectives, but how we kind of do some of those things is up to us. And so that's something that, I really take pride in, because our BRG is a lot more of kind of that, hey, we're here as an ally and support, an advocate, and then also just providing, again, a lot of insight on different things when it comes to disability inclusion, whereas some of our other BRGs are focused on recruitment or different things like that. That's their primary focus. But yeah, that's kind of where we've started and come from.
Excellent. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Laura, I know you had mentioned in one of our previous conversations that you are part of several different groups.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about maybe how some of those got started, or maybe even the disability focused, and why you've joined all of those various groups?
Sure, absolutely. So I started with Grant Thornton in December of 2016, and actually the first BRG that I joined was Equality GT. But after, and I joined the executive committee for Equality GT at the time, and my reason for doing that, number one, just to be an ally to the LGBT community, but my son is also gay. And so the legislation and the things that come down that affect the LGBTQ plus community affect him. And so it is imperative to me to know about those things. And that was why I joined that BRG initially. But in doing that, I realized that we did have diverse abilities, but they weren't really doing anything. We kind of have the big, what I like to call the big four BRGs, the women, LGBT, Equality GT, the African American, and, the other smaller groups weren't really getting that same traction and that same promotion. And so I went to the executive sponsor, who at the time was Mike Sante, who used to be on the board for disability in Chicagoland, and said to him, I want to help. What can I do to help? And he basically handed me the reins and let me go with it. So thank you, Mike, for that, because it was really it has been a life-changing experience. And so I've been with the firm for 4 years, and I've been doing diverse abilities for about 3.5 of that 4 years, starting as the national coordinator. And at the time that I started as national coordinator, I think we had about 30 members nationally. When I stepped down from the national coordinator role in, I believe, 2018, we had over 200 members nationally. And that was just driven by my passion for disability inclusion. I had no idea what I was doing. I freely stole ideas from other BRG leaders. I just straight up went to them and was like, I'm trying to start this. I need help. Can you tell me what I need to do? Can you point me in the direction of networking events? Like, I had no idea. I had never done anything like this before. And everybody was super helpful. I had the opportunity to meet Laura Wilhelm with Disability in Chicagoland, and she has continued to help me as well build that network. And it just was my own passion that drove me to go out and network and meet people and sit on panels and learn about disability inclusion and accessibility and mental health in the workplace, which is something that's really important to me because I live with borderline personality disorder. And yeah, so that's kind of it. And the reason I joined all the other groups is because we're all, as Ari said, working toward the same goal. And I don't remember who said it, but we can't have equality for any of us until all of us have equality and inclusion. And so that's why I'm an ally for all those groups, because we all have something that we can bring to each of those groups. I can go into those groups in my identity as a person with disabilities, and I can say to our future leaders, hey, have you guys thought about this when you're planning an event? Or have you thought about this from a recruiting standpoint? Have you thought about what it's like for women with disabilities who are parents? So that would be something that would intersect with both our women's BRG and our working parents BRG. And so I feel like by bringing those different perspectives to the different groups, I'm able to make us more effective and give us a broader picture of what it is that we're actually working towards, which is why I recently became one of the leaders of our Education and Action Committee with our African American BRG in Chicago, because again, I think a lot of our issues stem from the lack of knowledge, and lack of knowing, why things are offensive to Black people, and, why I might be aggressive. People are really quick to call me aggressive in my approach. I'm very passionate. I can be very passionate. And so people are very quick to call my approach aggressive or assertive, but they don't stop to think about why I might be aggressive. As a Black woman growing up in Chicago, you kind of sometimes have to be aggressive. I was a single parent. I didn't have time to be nice, right? So, it's that perspective, it's that shift in perspective that says, yes, that person might be aggressive, but why? And I think that's why the BRGs are important, because it gives you that why.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Laura. I'm going to go to the next question, and I think Jennifer, you have the lead on this one again. And please, everybody, jump in. But what are some disincentives that you faced in forming or maintaining your BRG?
So much like we, with our BRG, we removed the dis on our abilities. I would say I wouldn't necessarily classify these as a disincentive, but just some things to consider. Balancing BRGs really needs to work with schedules, and work volume can be a challenge. You know, after all, that's why we are even with the organization, is to do our job. And so finding that balance can sometimes be a challenge. Ensuring that our BRGs do stay focused on corporate priorities rather than always, you know, necessarily chasing what's popular out there, because we want to make that impact. And we want to ensure that, you know, we are adding value in those different areas that are going to only help us and make us stronger. And then there's the 80-20 rule situation, where 20% of the people are probably doing about 80% of the work. And so it's something that you have to diligently manage by setting clear expectations, not being afraid. I've learned as a leader myself with the BRG is not be afraid to saying, hey guys, nobody's stepping up. I need some help, and not always taking it on myself either. And so really learning to balance that and being just upfront about it. Those are some of the things that I would say are things that to really take into consideration, you know, and some common challenges that I think are just amongst all of the BRGs.
Excellent. Great. Anyone else want to chime in on that? Karina?
And I'll just add quickly, as well, just being mindful of time. One of the things I've noticed too in just helping lead BRGs, that's like a common just disincentive or to maintain like momentum with BRGs, is the lack of leadership or company buy-in. And so I think for folks that on this call who are leaders or kind of have that ability to influence, it's really important to kind of recognize that power that you have as a leader, especially if you're like the CEO or part of the executive leadership team, in support in what publicly demonstrating your support for BRGs does for the organization. And so at Grant Thornton, we've definitely, I think in the past few years, had our executive leadership team and CEO really step up and promote and champion BRG events, as well as even sometimes be part of, either from like making remarks or even just attending and being participants. And that really sends a message, you know, to have your CEO attend these events. And really, you know, these folks also have like the power to, you know, add resources like budgets or, you know, holding employees accountable to DEI goals, and also creating that psychological safety for employees to bring ideas or feedback without retaliation if they're demonstrating their support. And I think too, oftentimes in the BRG space, we talk about middle managers not really supporting BRG events. That's kind of where most of the resistance comes for folks who are participating in BRG events, where, you know, their manager doesn't really approve of that. And so I think that's where leaders and having that buy-in and having conversations with those folks really kind of gets at that and allows folks to participate in BRGs without kind of feeling bad for it.
Yeah, great. Ari, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I think where I work, it's just a little bit, maybe, I don't know if it's different than all the other panelists, but where I work, I'm kind of a billable resource. So all of my time is charged towards projects to stay billable. And that's how I'm graded, or my performance is deemed successful. So it comes really hard to manage leading an ERG and then remaining billable sometimes, just because it is a lot of work, especially in the beginning. I'm sure all the panelists can tell you how many hours they spend. I tell people it's the part-time job I didn't get paid for, but I love the most, right? That's what I always tell people. I love this job. It's so great and fun, but you know, just supporting. And I think really at the end of the day, what I find is hard is generally when people don't understand the value the ERGs bring to the company, and really effectively communicating why we're actually even doing this is actually a benefit to us, because then people start to value it, and then people join, and then people see, oh, this is what this is all about. It's not really acting outside of our organizations or these people that are like each other that are just gathering for their own personal gain, right? It's really the benefit of everyone, and funding your ERGs and providing them HR or whatever, support to actually help them with maybe administrative tasks, or provide them the level of support that they need, because it definitely is a lot of work and it does benefit the company. So that should be compensated in some fashion to some degree, right?
Yeah.
I've used my ERG experience to help me gain more leadership experience. That's kind of how I've spun it. So people get it, say, hey, this is part of your training. You get to talk to CEOs of business units, which not many people get to do at my level. But I find that some of that barriers are just some people, just like, maybe Laura or another person mentioned, is people don't see the value of it. And if senior leaders aren't kind of showing up for that, that kind of almost reinforces that message. And I always say, you have to take a stand. You can't be wishy-washy about it. You have to say, we either really advocate for the equality of people or we don't. So that's kind of some of the disincentives or things that I've kind of noticed. So thank you.
Excellent. I think you're in the category Laura mentioned about being passionate, right?
Yes, I'm not aggressive. I've experienced that myself, Laura, where people have used, hey, I appreciate how you're communicating this. And I'm like, well, I don't think you understand where I'm coming from. And that's why I'm amping it up a little bit right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta
Absolutely.
amp it up, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're running short on time, believe it or not. So Laura, if you would real quickly just talk about, and I think I saw a question in the chat about this along the same lines, but take the lead on this last question of what could companies do more of to engage people to join or encourage people to enjoy or join, gosh, I'm getting tongue-tied, the ERG BRG group.
I think doing just what Karina said, which is putting that senior leadership support behind the BRGs publicly, being members of the BRG, but also taking leadership roles, doing things like participating in these types of panels, representing the BRG to show people that they are actually serious about disability inclusion or whatever BRG it is that you're trying to start. Pay people to do it. Like, if it's important to you, make it a job. Make it someone's full-time job, because like Ari said, it's the part-time job that I have that I love, but I don't get paid for. And it's interesting because I'm actually going to be stepping down from leading diverse abilities at the end of this month. And it was one of the hardest decisions that I've ever had to make, because I have learned so much, and like Ari said, have had an opportunity to build my leadership skills and build my network. I was able to participate and become a member of ADA 25 Advancing Leadership here in Chicago because of my experience with diverse abilities. And so, it really is a passion project for me. But as I also said, I've been doing it for 3.5 of the 4 years I've been with the firm. And so, it's at some point, it's like, okay, I'm tired now. And it just is like it's time for somebody else to kind of step up and take over. But having that senior leadership support, having the partner step up, or the CEO, or the lawyers, or whatever kind of business it is that you operate, having those people show up, making it part of their scorecard and part of their performance to actively engage in BRG events. Not just show up when the CEO is in town, but to always show up for BRG events, make it part of their bonus.
Yeah.
Or, whatever that they have to attend X amount of BRG events. They have to lead X amount of BRG events. People make time for the things that are important to them.
Yeah.
And that other saying is kind of put your money where your mouth is. So if DEI is of strategic importance to you,
Mhm.
Put your budget behind it. Put the strength of your platform behind it. Put your privilege that you have as a leader, as a CEO, whatever it is, behind that. Make public statements supporting LGBTQ plus individuals or individuals with disability, or speaking out against the Asian American hate that's been happening so frequently lately. All of those things show your employees that you really you have skin in the game. Like, you're walking the walk. You're not just talking about, you're just not talking about it, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I think you really hit a big piece there, Laura, and it's about influence. I think you would agree to that. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to have us pause just a moment and see, Brenda, do we have questions in the chat? Anyone would like to ask a question, since we have a few minutes left in the webinar? So, Brenda, did we have any in the chat so far?
You've addressed most of them. There have been some great comments. If some of those who have made comments want to raise their hand as a question about that.
Okay.
Sounds like now would be a good time for that.
Okay. So I would invite you, if you do have a question, you can go ahead and unmute. If you want to unmute and turn your camera on, that's fine. And you can ask the panelists a question. So I invite you to do that. I can't believe we don't have anyone to have a question.
I just wanted to really quickly add to that last question, and I don't want to take up much time.
Okay.
One of the things that we do with encouraging people to join the BRGs is promoting the fact that they're inclusive of all. I know we've said this numerous times on this meeting. Storytelling and highlighting successes, it has been a really, really great way for us to kind of advocate. And also, this comes from the recruiting standpoint. With me being a recruiter, is talking about it from even with candidates, because they know that this is important to our company, and also highlighting it on the onboarding process as well. When they join, when they're in orientation, we introduce the BRGs in orientation. So from day one, they're aware of it. So there's just a couple of other things.
Excellent. Thank you. I think, Anne, you raised your hand. Would you like to ask a question? You can go ahead and unmute. Okay. Maybe you could type it in the chat if you can't unmute. All right. Anyone else have a question for the panelists? You know, I think some of you talked a little bit about some of the disincentives. Any other thoughts around challenges that you face? And I would be curious to know. In May we have a webinar around the self-identification campaign for those that are federal contractors. How do the BRGs play a role in encouraging people to self-identify during those campaigns that companies have? Do you have any input on that piece?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
Laura. Sorry, Jennifer. Yeah, definitely. You can use the BRGs to help promote those events. You can, ask BRG members. You can start with your BRG to get people to self-identify and kind of gauge, you can get feedback, you can gauge people's interest in doing that, but you can also use that BRG connection to help promote those ideas and promote that self-ID, to make sure that, that our allies are also self-IDing, so that, people understand that we're not trying to single out people with disabilities. We just we want everyone to self-ID so that we know who we have here. You know, we at Grant Thornton don't currently have a disability self-ID, but we do have one for our LGBTQ plus individuals. And it's encouraged that allies also self-ID, just so we have an idea of what our demographics are. You know, that's really the point of the self-ID, is so that we can find out what our demographics are. So, you know, your BRG can definitely be helpful in kind of getting that message out.
Okay, great, great. Jennifer, you had a thought on that?
It totally blew my mind there for a second. Oh yeah. So I will say one of the things that we've also leveraged is because we do have a partnership with Disability In, is we've partnered with Darla and Brenda to also get insight on how do we leverage and how do we show people that it's safe to self-identify. We've also, again, as I say, storytelling is such a big thing too, because it shows people that, hey, it's safe to self-identify. And here's somebody that you may not have known, especially if you can get leadership to some of those people may have hidden disabilities that that nobody would have known about. And to have that and to really display that can really also help to show, hey, see, somebody, so-and-so has this disability, but they're this type of leader and doing great things. And so don't be afraid to self-identify. And then also just demonstrating what is done with that data is going to be key too, because people aren't going to necessarily, they want to make sure that, you know, if I have a hidden disability, my, you know, teammate isn't going to find out unless I want them to. And so really, I think communicating that is going to be key too.
Yeah, great points. Thank you guys so much. I know we could probably go on for another hour, right? But we are at the top of the hour, and I want to respect everyone's time because I know how people jump from meeting to meeting. But thank you all so much for being here and participating, but also thanks to each of you as panelists. Your wealth of information and your expertise is so much appreciated. I know by lots of comments we've seen in the chat. Hopefully you've gotten to take a look at those thank yous as well. Just know that we each of our affiliates, Chicagoland and Wisconsin and Kansas City, we've all got upcoming events. I hope that everybody will check out those and participate in any and all that you're able to. And thank you again. And I really appreciate everyone's attention to this particular topic, and wish everyone, you know, the best of luck in moving your ERGs and BRGs forward. So enjoy the rest of your day, folks. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.